Hi, welcome to the archives. So, this episode is called Sacrificing the Poor. I've been thinking a lot about who gets sacrificed in the name of the common good or in coming up. And almost always in my reflections, I realize that it tends to be poor people, and that includes racialized poor people, disabled folks, and they tend to get the short end of the stick. So, case in point, I was recently reading a Washington Post article by Cathy O'Neil. And the article is called "The Vaccine Hesitant Could Use Some Friendly Shame." And in the article, she talks about how um, back in the days, a gardener, or there was a scientist, and his gardener was the one who ended up getting sacrificed. They didn't end up dying, but I'll share what she writes. So Cathy writes, on a spring day in 1796, Jenner harvested pus from the hands of the forearms of a local milkmaid named Sarah Nelms and used it to inoculate James Phipps, the 8-year-old son of his gardener. Jenner then gave the boy what would have been a deadly dose of smallpox. The boy survived. Just to make sure, Jenner went on to infect Phipps 20 more times. The boy's defense held, and the first vaccine was born. So, again, just to give some context, this was back in the days when there's a smallpox. They're trying to figure out why milkmaids weren't getting um, smallpox or dying from it like the rest of others in the community. And so they wanted to test out why. And it was this gardener's son that ended up being used as a quote unquote guinea pig. So she goes on to add, yeah, its development also shed light on how some lives are valued more than others. In Jenner's view, many lives were worth far more than one life risked. Right? So here's a point where it's like this just one person and you're saving millions of people in the end, especially of a low-born boy. On the social scale of 18th century Britain, Jenner occupied a master's caste. He had servants, including his landless gardener and the gardener's son. This is what Cathy's writing in the article. She goes on to say, this gave him the authority in the name of science to put the child's life at risk. It was in the interest of society. As enunciated by a person in a position of power and knowledge that permitted Jenner to steamroll the rights of an individual, especially a poor one. O'Neil goes on to cite the infamous Tuskegee experiment, which unethically left black men with syphilis untreated, even though there was treatments at the time and that they were diagnosed. She also points to Henrietta Lacks, who had cancer, and her cells were used and harvested, and they're still used in medicine today, including for the COVID-19 vaccine. Henrietta Lacks died a poor woman from cancer. Her family got, from my understanding, very little payment, if at all, though her cells have been used all of these years and generated so much money for the medical industrial complex. A lot of third worlds, mostly black and brown folks, those who tend to be poor, have also been used for such testing in the name of science and research. And I guess the idea is like somebody's got to do it, right? But I can't imagine rich white people jumping at the opportunity to sacrifice themselves so easily in the name of anything, really. It's as if they value their lives and they want to live to see another day. And my thing is, so do so many of us, like plot twist. Like, so do the rest of us. We also want to live. And it's interesting who we turn to when we have some of these different things, when we want to be able to create a quote unquote better society where we have vaccines for all. We're so grateful for this young boy and for all those people who've put their literal bodies on the lines in order for us to live in healthier societies. But it's so awkward. It's a little bit strange knowing that it tends to always be the poor people who we look to in a way save us. which for me is very complicated because living this life as if I value myself, living to want to expand and to do better, it's really sticky somehow. I have a lot of complicated feelings around this life that I'm trying to create for myself, one where I flow more into ease and just really do away with suffering. I struggle with the carbon footprint that I'm leaving or I may leave in the future in the quest of, living my best life. I have passport privileges, as do many folks of Canadian, American, or European, Australian passports. Undeniably, our passports are way better than a lot of people. And we're seeing that right now in Europe with folks who don't have European passports or who don't have visas and are not able to move in and out of borders as easily as others. I'm sure some would say that I struggle with thinking that I deserve better for myself in life, and they're not wrong to an extent. But I think that based on my financial trauma, and I do have a lot of resistance to rich people and to money in general, and that does block certain level of financial freedom from flowing my way. And I recognize that. But I'm also very aware that the social location that I live as a Black woman, um, the socio-political is also very real, right? So how do we put spiritual conversations in conversation with the socio-political context? Like it's reality is that so many of us are blocked from upwards mobility because of the ways in which we inhabit certain identities, the way in which we choose to live, who we were born to, the communities we belong to. And so I know that for me, I'm trying to be honest about my privileges and how it comes at the expense of others. In most cases, two things can be true at the same time, right? We live in a world where abundance for some means off the backs of others, and that it's almost always poor people. I feel some type of way exploiting or benefiting the labor of low income people who are already underpaid, they're already overworked, they're already taken advantage of on a daily basis and exploited. So it is weird to me. I want to be able to have a life of luxury or abundance and just to feel good and to have ease and comfort and not always be in pain, right? I don't always want to be somebody's trauma porn. I want to be able to survive. I want to be able to thrive. But I want that for all of us. I want that for so many more of us, I will say. Um, yeah, or at the very least for those who desire it. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you struggle with um, calling in good things for your life? Do you think about those who are not able to have that same access or privilege? What does that mean for you? How do you negotiate that? Because I'm very much so struggling with that, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. As always, like, subscribe, share. Thank you so much for supporting. Let me know your thoughts and your feedback. Have a great day. Thanks for dropping by.